Hey guys, this is PODFIC, and today we're going to be reading Alcatraz, but on Hardmode by Sunny Blue. This is Chapter 2. Tim freezes. He feels his friends tense behind him, but he knows they're doing it for a very different reason than he is. They're scared, rigid with fear of what might attack them when they're totally defenseless and so far from home. But Tim would know that voice anywhere. The reason he freezes is because he definitely didn't expect to hear it here. But here's part of anywhere, and damn it if he doesn't know that voice. It's laughing with him in the living room at 2 a.m. It's telling him to be careful tonight in the depths of the Batcave. It's promising death to whoever ate the last of Alfred's cookies in the kitchen. It's annoying and bitchy and it spews a lot of bullshit, and he doesn't know if he's ever been so relieved to hear it. Threatening someone's life. Where is he? The voice barks, and his friends all startle, but Tim relaxes, and a small smile makes its way to his bloodied face. Hood, he calls as loudly as he can, and he hears 4 sharp inhales behind him. 4 pairs of feet scrabbling for purchase to push his friend further back against the wall, trying to hide, but he ignores them because they'll understand soon enough, and right now he doesn't even care how much Jason makes fun of him for this. He just wants to see his brother and get out of these damn Alcatraz handcuffs. Here, there's the familiar sound of pistol whips striking a temple and then boots running near silently in the direction of their cell. The fact that he's making any noise at all is a good sign. He must have taken out every threat in the immediate area. The footsteps draw near, and Bart whispers something like, "Nice knowing you guys." And Tim doesn't even bother to roll his eyes because suddenly the bulky form of Jason Todd is skipping to a stop in front of their cell, catching himself on the bars of the door. He takes one look inside and moves to what Tim thinks is a control panel beside the cell, pulling one of Oracle's code breakers from his belt and slapping it onto the screen. In 3 seconds, the bars slide away, and Jason steps inside and looks only at Tim with a huge shit-eating grin on his face. "Hey, replacement," he says. And obviously Tim knows better than this, but it really looks like Jason hasn't even noticed the other 4 boys. He's got that grin, but Tim can see the pinpoint focus and the slight bunch of his shoulders, can see his worry in the ways he holds his left hand. Nonetheless, Tim will play along for as long as Jason keeps the charade going, because he knows it'll help reassure him. "Hey, jackass," he huffs, as if he isn't way beyond happy to see him. But he knows Jason can see right through him as easily as Tim can see through Jason. Behind him, Jamie mumbles a small "the," and Tim continues to ignore them all. He feels kind of bad, but what the hell is he gonna do? It's not like he can help get them out. Jason crouches down in front of him and hits the release on his helmet, setting it down beside him with only a domino to cover his face, nearly visible brows drawing closer and closer together as he takes in his brother's restraints and condition. For the first time, he glances up at the other 4, who flinch back hard, and a smirk twitches at his lips as he scans over their restraints too. He looks back at Tim and gives a low whistle. "Jesus, Red. What do you do to piss him off so much?" He gently pushes Tim's hair out of his face and frowns at the blood. It's basically everywhere at this point. But Tim knows he can tell at a glance that it's from his nose and nothing more important. "Report?" he asks as he moves to inspect the Alcatraz handcuffs. And Tim knows it's only a question because part of him is asking if Tim even can report right now. Of course he can. He's not a toddler. Damn. 2 to 4 cracked ribs, mild to moderate concussion, heavy but non-lethal bruising to the abdomen and upper body, possible mild bruising to extremities, broken nose, swallowed some blood, throw it back up. "Sounds like my kind of Friday night," Jason says. He holds up the huge chunk of metal encasing Tim's hands and feet and connecting them together, taking some strain off of his shoulders and hips. He'd really like to sit up. These things are insane. There's like 6 locks here. Can barely even see them. This is gonna take a minute. But he pulls out 3 lock picks, the tiny ones that they almost never use, and goes to work. "Seriously, what'd you do?" "Slip the first ones," Tim says, and he would shrug, but his entire body kind of aches now that the adrenaline is fading with the relief of someone coming to help them. So he's not gonna do that. Jason grins and doesn't look away from the restraints. "Attaboy." Tim grumbles. Couldn't slip the second ones. Jason's eyes widen, but still, they don't look away. His focus is locked down, no matter how much talking he does. He can compartmentalize like that. Tim may or may not be jealous of it. Christ, these are only the second ones? They're connected to your feet and everything. Don't they know you unlock a hard mode after beating all the easier ones? Tim huffs a laugh, sniffling in annoyance as more blood trickles out of his nose. Jason moves out of the way and Tim spits out the blood, and Jason immediately goes back to work. No words needed. Tim is so glad to see him. "Squad, report," Jason says after a moment, and Tim feels the squad jolt as a unit. "Hey, at least they're working together." Jamie lets out an accidental grunt of startlement, and the others take that as indication that he's the one who's going to speak, which makes Tim want to laugh at the look of total betrayal he knows is on his friend's face. Jamie does his best to emulate Robin. We're fine. mild bruising to the wrists and ankles, and standard cuts and scrapes from a fight earlier, he says, slowly gaining confidence. Tim is proud of him. Talking to the Red Hood is no small feat, whether he's wearing that red hood or the domino under it. Hell, even if it's just Jason Todd, the guy can be a real bitch. The restraints have disabled our powers, but we should be back to normal once they're off, Jamie continues. Jason doesn't react beyond a nod, filing away the information in one of the compartments in his brain. Tim rolls his eyes and grunts to get his attention, and when Jason meets his eyes, he gestures minutely towards Jamie. Jason bites back an annoyed sigh, which Tim is thankful for, and spares a glance at Jamie. Good work, he says, and Tim can see the gears turning in his head as he tries to figure out how to display an appreciative facial expression to someone who isn't versed in the delicate art of interpreting emotions under a domino mask. All of you, Jason says, sparing a glance for the other squad members too. For a moment there's a stunned pause, and then Jamie breaks it with a quiet, "Thanks for getting us out." Jason nods again. "Thanks for taking care of this idiot." He rebounds, and Tim huffs. Jason grins at him and heaves a theatrical sigh, clicks his tongue, shakes his head, sighs. He's not about to just get his shit together and do it himself. Tim's scoff is partially blocked by the coagulating blood in his nose. At least the bleeding is finally slowing down. "I thought you stopped trying to kill me," he says. Jason snorts and grins wider, but doesn't say anything because in the next second the Alcatraz handcuffs are finally falling away. Tim lets out a relieved breath he didn't know he'd been holding and flexes his chilled fingers. Jason carefully inspects his hands for injuries before moving on to the metal strips around his knees and thighs, which must have simpler locks on them because Jason has them off in 10 seconds each. And then suddenly, Tim's pounding head is resting comfortably in the crook of a shoulder, and he's being hugged tightly to his brother's chest. Jason doesn't do hugs, almost never. He does them when he needs to carry someone, but that doesn't really count. And sometimes, he does them if somebody is upset enough that he decides they really need it. Dick, usually. Jason doesn't do hugs for himself. He never has, and that's just him. And that's always been fine. But this, right now, this is different. Tim is tired and hurting, yeah, but he isn't upset, and he doesn't need to be carried, yet. This hug is happening, and it isn't for Tim. This hug is for Jason. Slowly, hesitantly, Tim brings his arms under Jason's and wraps them around his brother's torso. Jason doesn't budge, just tucks him closer, and Tim has to admit he has somewhat of an urge to make fun of the guy to the ends of the earth for this. But he gets the feeling that this is important, somehow, that Jason needs this. So he shoves it all down and just lets himself be hugged. He doesn't usually get this opportunity after all. And as much as Tim will never admit it to Dick, few things make him feel better as well as a good, solid hug. "Jay," Tim whispers after a moment, making sure he's quiet enough that nobody but his brother can hear him. "Don't tell Goldie," Jason responds instantly, and Tim can't help the tired laugh that bubbles up out of his throat. "Secret safe with me." "Better be," Jason grumbles, and gives Tim a final squeeze before pulling back and reevaluating his brother, thumbing at some of the dried blood on his chin with a frown. "Let's get you patched up, baby bird." He sits Tim down against the wall, even his bright pink heat rises in his cheeks and ears. Of course Jason had to call him that and everyone his friends. Of course. Jason stows his tiny lock picks and pulls out a larger one, moving to Bart and making quick work of the simpler lock. Tim's friends all look less terrified than before, but definitely still substantially terrified. Jason ignores that and shakes his head, one eyebrow drawn. "Seriously? This is a level 1, and that was a level 2? He nods towards where Tim's restraints are crumpled on the floor, clicking his tongue like he's disappointed with this easy version as he moves to free Jamie. These guys really need to work on their difficulty progression, and you need to spend less time with your PlayStation, Tim grumbles, and Jason shoots him a wink. "We have a romantic dinner booked for tonight. I hate you." If Jason responds, Tim doesn't hear it, because he coughs exactly once, and suddenly everything in his body decides that it's time to fuck him up, and pain radiates through him, ribs protesting heroically, and white spots filling his vision again as darkness begins to march inwards from the outer edges of his eyes. "Shit!" comes spoken in a hissed voice, and vaguely reaches his ears, as he begins to tip sideways. He thinks it's sideways, anyways. Not that he really has his bearings right now. Bracing himself for a world of pain as the unforgiving metal ground rapidly approaches his face. Instead, he is met with an arm around his shoulder and another supporting his head, catching him inches from the floor and lowering him slowly the rest of the way. Hey, says a soft voice, one that's almost never this gentle, so he forces his eyes open again in confusion. Jason is still here, forehead pinched in concern as he keeps one hand on Tim's shoulder and the other carefully on top of his head. "Red, you with me?" he says quietly. "My head hurts," Tim grumbles, and he's pissed about how pathetic he sounds. But there's not a lot he can do about it because he can't really think straight. He's still speaking English though, so that's good. "I know, kiddo," Jason says, infinitely gentle as he brushes his fingers through Tim's hair. We'll be home soon. A blurry thought crosses Tim's mind as he frowns. Is anyone else here? Big Bird is on the other side of the ship, Jason says, nodding and slowly helping Tim to lie flat on his back, moving his hand to cover his eyes against the light. Tim sighs and lets his shoulders relax. The odd mix of ultraviolet and regular light in their cell has been disorienting, even to the non-concussed, so to have it removed from the equation is a huge relief, and Jason's hand is warm and familiar against his forehead. I calmed him when I heard you call, and again when I was opening the door, but he's pretty far away, so he said it would take him a few minutes to get here. Jason continues. There's a pause, and Tim can hear the frown in his voice when he considers him and says, I don't know if this concussion is really so mild to moderate, Red. Nah, it is. The alarm just fucked me up a bit, Tim acquiesces, moving to take over Jason's eye-covering job, but his brother bats his hands, and Tim scowls as best he can with half his face hidden. You still need to beat level 1. He feels Jason shake his head, but it's Bart's voice that filters through the air. We're crash, Rob. I've vibrated him off. We're all free, just, chillin'. You okay, buddy? He gives something between a snort and a scoff, and Tim feels a small smile creep up his face. He's siendo peor, he says again, and he hears a few small huffs of laughter that he counts as a win in his book. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you gotta be looking for trouble, Jason grumbles. The hell are you talking about? Tim mutters, poking a bony elbow into his brother's leg. I'm a Robin. Looking for trouble is literally my job. You're a psycho is what you are. Oh, pot, meat, kettle. Jesus Christ. Jason laughs and nudges Tim's shoulder with his knee, careful not to aggravate any injuries. Smartass. No, you, Tim says automatically, and Jason ignores him automatically as well. He swallows, wincing at the taste of blood still very much caked in and around his mouth, and of course, the wince makes his head hurt more, and Jason must feel his little shudder through his hand, because he hums and gently guides his little brother's head off the cold metal floor to rest on his lap, one hand still blocking the light, while the other carefully cards through his hair. Tim really doesn't want to admit that it makes him feel better, so he doesn't say anything, but he lets himself be helped for once. He's kind of too tired to devote any injury to maintaining his pride anyway. Can we leave now? He grumbles, and he knows he sounds like a petulant child, but hey, he's definitely not above pissing off his older brother. Well, Big Bird is the one with the mother box thing that none of you ever shut up about, but if you want, I could ditch your scrawny ass here and go track him down for no reason. Ah, there's the classic Jason Todd. Thank God there's this one now instead of one that was just being nice to him. Tim rolls his eyes, even though it hurts, and Jason's hand is covering them. Call it a reflex. What, you want a cookie or something? Jason scoffs. Again. He does that a lot. Yeah, I want the ones you fucking stole from the cabinet the other day, you bitch baby. Who said those were yours? There was a post-it note with my name on it on the jar. Tim hums pensively. It rattles in his skull, but he can't really bring himself to care. Sounds like a pretty shit security system to me. Not even encrypted. And when the hell did the replacement grow some balls? I ain't scared of you, Tim says, grinning and drawing on his extensive mental files of Jason's crime alley rat accent. I survived the first 3 times he tried to kill me. What was left to be scared of? I could replace your coffee with decaf. Tim freezes. Again, the jolt puts another wave of pain in his head, but he's also panicking, so he still doesn't care. You wouldn't. I would, and I'm gonna. Because in case you hadn't noticed, you have a goddamn concussion shit for brains. Tim groans. It hurts. He doesn't care, etc. You're a fucking sadist. Jason is grinning. He can feel it in the air. Hell yeah, I am. He pauses for a second and says, So who are your little pals, baby bird? Tim pauses to think through the lineup. Lagoon Boy. Team tenure 11 months. Jamie Reyes, Blue Beetle. Team tenure 10 months. Bart Allen, Impulse. Team tenure 2 months. Virgil Hawkins, Static. Team tenure 3.5 weeks. And of course, Jason Todd, Red Hood/Robin too, who died over 5 years ago now. None of the squad would have any way of knowing him as Robin too, but Jason hadn't necessarily known that when he busted in here and took off his helmet like it was no big deal. Yeah, he was wearing a domino, but anyone who's seen Jason as Robin would likely recognize him even with how much he's grown physically. Holy shit! Tim hisses, jolting to sit up, and of course it hurts like a bitch. But this time, it's enough to force a grunt of pain past his lips and make him fall back to his place. Hey, stay down, idiot, Jason says, but there's nothing but concern behind it. Tim grits his teeth as pain hits him in waves, and Jason just sits with him through it, the hand in his hair a comforting safe presence that he tries his best to latch onto as he works on pulling himself back. He swallows hard, and can't help the breathless gag that rolls up his throat, and fuck. Maybe Jason is right that this concussion is worse than he thought it was. Because even though he can remember stuff, it's really bad. It's definitely been a long time since he's had one that hurts this bad. When it passes, Tim lets his body go limp and lets a relieved breath escape his lips, and Jason must think he'd passed out because he curses and lifts his hand away. The change in light makes Tim startle slightly and open his eyes, which he kind of regrets, but it doesn't hurt quite as much as he thought it would, and it's definitely worth it to see the relief that floods Jason's face, his brow relaxing, and a small sigh puffing against Tim's skin. Jesus, his brother mutters, voice hushed and careful. You don't do anything halfway, do you? Where's the fun in that? You're a moron, Red. That's fair. Alright guys, and that is the end of chapter 3 of Alcatraz on Hardmode by Sunny Blue. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you next chapter.